everybody. This is Scott Mcdonald, and I'm so glad to be with you. Now, at Dr. Demographics, and that's the company that we're talking about working with, we try to give you data as well as an analysis of the trends that we're seeing. Today, we're going to be talking about some trends. Now, let me stop and just explain. Almost all the topics that I discuss week to week come to me because of conversations that I've had with doctors, real live people who are having problems and actually questions, and we try to answer those questions and help them as best we can. So this is a reflection of what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing. This is not going to be a week in which I'm going to say, go to this location versus that location. Now, I do those from time to time. I want you to understand it's kind of a thing that we do to try to give doctors an idea of what parts of the United States are looking good. And occasionally we'll actually talk about places that are looking bad and try to explain why. Now, I'm not going to talk about what parts of the country that are doing well or even what parts of certain states are looking really good. I'm going to save that for next week and the week after. For right now, we're going to talk about places that are, about a trend that we're seeing. And the trends are a little spooky right now. There are some headwinds to people who want to get into practice for themselves. Now, look, I know in my conversations that the only way to really get wealthy and to have long-term professional success is to own your own practice. It isn't to work for somebody else, even though I know that there are good opportunities out there. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but I'm going to say if you want real risk to be eliminated, you have to take some risks, and we want to mitigate those risks as much as we can. I want to help you understand what you're in for. So in this little session, we're going to talk about some risks, we're going to talk about opportunities, and we're going to talk about a little philosophy. I call this Audantes Fortuna Avate, or Avate. You pronounce a V in Latin with a W sound. So here's kind of the deal. Fortune favors the bold. That has been said in every language, in every country throughout history. There are times that you're going to have to make some risks. You're going to have to undertake some challenges, and you're going to have to fight against the headwinds. And right now, at this moment, there are some obvious headwinds that are making people shrink back and say, I can't do it. And they're looking for easy answers. Sometimes they're looking for options that have no risk. During a time like this, there is a tremendous opportunity to make a huge amount of money, but it's not going to come overnight. It's going to come long term. The benefits of being in business, and specifically having a practice of any healthcare character right now, is great. You have a lot of opportunities because so many people are fleeing in panic. In other words, the cowards are saying, I don't want to do it. I don't want to risk it. I'm out of here. I'm gone. I don't want you to do that. In fact, I see this as a rare opportunity, and I want to explain why I do this. Now, at Dr. Demographics, we're all about knowing where to move, start a business or practice, and promote your efforts and get the most out of your location. I mentioned that we're always keeping an eye on the trends. Well, right now, the trends are toward fear. I'll explain. At this time, you are going to have to be smart and you're going to have to be bold. Those are two separate statements. To be smart means you're going to do some market research right now when everybody else is saying, I don't want to know. And you have to be bold, which means you got to have a little guts. Because if you have guts, well, you'll get some very big, serious rewards. But it isn't going to happen without getting some information and then acting on the information relatively soon. So let's get into these trends. Right now, the bold, those people who are brave, are the only ones who have a chance of making a lot of money in healthcare. This is not the time to be a coward. Low-hanging fruit is deceptive. I don't think it's there. I don't think it's a good idea. So I'm saying you got to take some different approach. So let me explain. Why only the bold at this time? Well, look, and you know what I'm saying is true. So here are the trends that we're looking at. Inflation is on the rise. This week, inflation accelerated faster than it has in 20 years or longer. In some parts of the United States, it is going crazy high. So inflation is making a lot of people say, Now's not the time to own a business. Now's not the time to take a risk. Now's not the time to take a loan out. I get that. I completely understand. Unfortunately, it's not good advice. Interest rates are due to rise a great deal, and they're due to rise quickly. It hasn't happened yet. Now, I want you to hear me out on this, because at this very moment in time, the interest rates, while they're not super low, they haven't risen yet. And one of the reasons why is the Fed has been afraid of really rocking the boat regarding the political class. There are lots of people who are worried about hurting the president of the United States and the tenuous hold that Congress has on a very, very thin majority. So they're believing that somehow if they increase interest rates, well, they're going to all be in trouble. There's also an indication that the Fed is going to stop buying debt. Now, in order to help politicians, the Fed has funded a lot of its growth by purchasing debt in the business market, and they do so at a big discount. Now, the difference between one kind of transaction and another regarding what debt instruments are used is complicated macroeconomics, and I'm not going to get into it. I'm merely going to say they kind of know what they're doing, and they're not going to make the game table lose for them. So they're going to make rates rise so that the banking industry can retain its value, and interest, I should say inflation will be reduced when they raise interest rates. There is a relationship there by how much debt they're willing to retire and how much they're willing to cause. Now, low risks and affordable practices, those two things together are becoming rarer. And I'm saying by this that there was a time in which there were practices for sale, and everybody wanted to get a practice for sale. And they were saying that's the least risky way to go because we have a known quantity of patients coming through. And therefore, if you can find a low-priced practice at a good rate, well, that's just easy money. Problem is, those practices are very rare right now. And in fact, I'm going to go so far as to say, if you look at the long-term trends of debt, the collections and production within practices, it's right now not a good time to look at even existing practices. So a lot of practices that were looking pretty good even 6 months ago are not looking so good on paper. Now, a practice broker can explain this to you. So can very good lenders. They'll be able to analyze it. I get it. And you need to know what they have to say. So please hear me out. But with a small inventory of practices to purchase and the good deals, those practices with low risk that are really affordable are becoming very hard to find. The only other option is to do a startup. In other words, you're going to have to take some risk because there is no set fact. There's no set scenario that makes it a really good idea to purchase. I hope you're following. Now, the other thing is, it's another headwind, is lease rates are being renegotiated and are going up. This is particularly true in urban practice areas. Now, the building that a practice operates, they may or may not own. If they don't own it, they have to negotiate a lease rate. The safest thing for most doctors is to choose the smallest or lowest period of time to lease a property. Of course, it would be terrific if you could find an affordable office building and put your practice in there and pay yourself that important amount of money. But everybody is afraid of going into urban areas and purchasing a building because it's almost a guaranteed loss right now. I get that. So what are you going to do? Well, for one thing, building a building can be a really good idea because of purchasing an existing practice, or I should say office building, is higher risk than building. There are options to build a building that are far less expensive. Now, this is not going to be true everywhere in the United States. You have to cherry pick the community that you're in. But if you look at certain parts of certain cities and states, it's a good deal. I want you to understand, good deals can be found, and you can build equity very, very fast within a building if the proper deal has been struck. Now, how much it's going to be, that's going to vary very much. But I do know as a demographer that these lease rates are going to be in flux. So even if you get into a lease, you can negotiate it so you don't have to have a very long lease. A 10-year lease is too darn long. But a shorter lease rate with the option to renegotiate is still there many times. So rather than run away from deals and to think, oh no, we're doomed, smart money is finding that there is an opportunity in certain markets to purchase physical assets as a hedge for inflation. It's a good option, in other words. Now, here's another fact of life, and it's just true. A lot of staff people have not returned to the office. It's not everywhere, but it certainly is a big enough trend that a lot of people have said, I can't hire good staff, or I can't retain my old staff at the rates that I can make money. So they're having to downsize or to replace experienced staff with inexperienced staff at a lower rate. In short, that seems to put all the risk back on the doctor. Well, look, I'm not going to say that this isn't happening. I know that it is. But I do know that smart staff will recognize the trend. They're not going to be able to stay out of the market forever, and that unemployment is on the horizon. So a lot of people who all of a sudden their spouses have lost their job are rethinking, how permanent is the position I'm in? There are also ways to incentivize staff to stay with the practice, but it takes creativity in order to do it. Profit sharing is one way, for example, or to have a flexible bonus system that's based upon actual production figures. Doctors, yes, I recognize we've got serious staff problems, but I also know that opportunities exist when the doctor is thinking like a business person, not just like a doctor, if you know what I mean. And no, I'm not trying to insult you. I'm just saying it's a fact of life. Now, there's another fact that is facing healthcare right now. A lot of people, patients, are putting off getting treatment. Now, if you have a large treatment plan, a lot of patients are saying, I don't want to undertake a treatment plan that's long-term because I don't know about the future, and therefore they're pulling back from initiating production. If you, doctor, and your staff will let them do that and think, well, that's okay, you can put it off as long as you want, you've made a mistake. Now, look, doctors, you want people to make a decision to get treatment sooner rather than later. But that also means that you have to incentivize them to seek care and give them a reason why they should get it done sooner rather than later. Now, if you will look at a thing called the health belief model, I've been researching it again this week. It came from the 1950s and is one of those things about how much risk are people willing to go through as a patient. What are they afraid of? What do they want? What do they need? What do they not need? And all of that, those constructs that Dr. Rosenstock came up with back in 1950s still are true today. But in order to have people follow through in their treatment, it is not a passive thing where doctors can simply say, well, that's my fee schedule, live with it. Or they cannot wisely say to a patient, well, you know best, whenever you're ready, we're here. We have to start taking the reins and being bolder in helping patients see that their best interests are served when they get treatments sooner rather than later. And that is not a passive exercise on your part. Do you see what I'm getting at? I want you to be bold. I want you to be better planned. And I want you to remember you're in control of this process, not nature, not the government, not the banks. You are. And you can affect the outcomes of what happens in your practice because of it. Now, let me keep going on with this theme about being bold. Demographics are forcing people to cluster in shrinking numbers of communities with promise. Now, what I mean by that is there are some places that are doing extremely well. People are moving there, and there are other parts of the country that people are running away from. Those two things are happening at the same time. In some parts of the country, you are unable to rent a moving van or to schedule a mover. On the others, they're throwing opportunities and discounts at you crazy, like right and left. And that's because the differences between one demographic cluster and another are vastly different in the outcomes. Now, there are a few places in the country that are showing serious growth And they're often tied to one particular factor, and that is the cost of living. Now, if you are looking for one factor that's going to make a big difference on where you should consider putting in practice, it's got to be based upon the cost of living. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, well, I think it's the reimbursement rate. Isn't that what really makes the big difference? No, that's an ancillary issue. Oh, it's important. Don't get me wrong. But if you understand why people are moving from one place to another, you'll understand it's always all tied into one thing. How much does it cost to live there? Now, implied in that is the cost of housing, availability of work. And by the way, there's a lot of work in a lot of places. But it also comes down to this. People are moving to those places that have lower taxes. Now, the state and local taxes are being renegotiated in New York and New Jersey and other big states. Not so much in California where it should be renegotiated, but the demographics are shifting so that those places that it is not expensive to live, doesn't require a lot of overhead, are the ones that are benefiting. There are some parts of the country you cannot build a house because it's too darn expensive, but that's not true everywhere. Now, here's where we come in at Dr. Demographics. Do you want to know where to go? We can tell you where to go. We can tell you where other people are going and why, and which parts of the country are likely to increase in their growth. Now, are there other demographic companies in the United States? There certainly are, just a lot of them, a lot. And those companies are great at being responsive or reflective. They'll say, oh, here's what the demographics are. But they won't tell you what the trend is toward growth and those places that are looking better and better. They're simply going to tell you what's going on in the statistics and hope that you know enough to be able to evaluate and judge between the locations with promise. Let me go on. Doctors are acting out of fear and a lot of caution. Their biggest motivation for doctors who are thinking about new places is this. They don't want to lose. They don't want to lose money. They don't want to lose one location when another one is better. And a lot of them are simply saying they're not going to play the game. I'm going to take my ball and go home. But that is an odd way to look at the potential. Right now is the time to do your research. You don't necessarily have to go out and make the deal on a lease, hire staff, big purchase equipments, even though, of course, the vendors would love it. But no, the point is, now is the time to do your research, because when this changes, it's going to change very rapidly. Now, government just voted itself a huge debt, $1 trillion, or actually several $1 trillion is what people are really saying that the increases are going to be in how much they're spending. And the money is not being well directed toward the people who are going to use the money wisely. But that is all the more reason to consider with a huge deficit on the horizon. Taxes are going to increase. Yes, they will. But that isn't a time in which you should say, well, I'm not going to play until this whole thing resolves itself, because by the time all the tax increases and the movement of people resolve themselves, it will be too late. Smarter people are taking the opportunities and setting up practice in the places that are going to work well for them. Now, the midterm elections are still a ways off. We've got about a year until that is going to happen, and everybody who's smart realizes there's going to be a big change. I'm not going to tell you in this forum how the changes are going to go. I already have gotten into a lot of trouble predicting elections, but I tend to predict elections based upon the trends. Next year, there's going to be a big change in November. So some people say, fine, a year from December, that's when I'll decide what to do. And everybody, it'll be too late, because the changes are going to be made, or the die is going to be cast actually in next August and September. November's too late. You've got to start this process moving now. I want you to know where you want to go and where the opportunities are going to lie now, because by the time the elections roll around and all the stuff is going to hit the fan, it will be too late for you. Non-business people are who is in Washington right now. I have been talking to some lobbyist friends of mine in Washington, D.C., Sacramento, and other big state capitals, Albany included. And what we're finding is non-business people are the ones making the big calls. That is a big mistake. But a lot of people feel helpless because of it. You're not. So let me make some recommendations to you, and I want you to share this with your friends and talk about it with your spouse, your significant others, everybody. For one thing, I don't think it's a good idea to succumb to fear. There is a fortune to be made right now or in the very near future, and I want you to be prepared for it. I want you to do your research right now. Now is the time to start identifying the trends that are showing real opportunity, and I want you to ask the question, where and when is this going to occur? That's what to know now. I want you to get rid of the sourpuss. Now, the sourpuss is not just your face where you've got a negative attitude. There are people right now acting out of fear. They're saying, for example, DSOs, DMOs, the only way to go is with a large organization that's going to take over the risk. But remember, every time someone else takes the risk, you lose the money. Just going to say. Now, the sourpuss also means that the people are being very negative. If you're around people who are always worried and glum and gloomy, that's a bad look, and it's not a good thing for you to do. You got to find people who are looking for opportunities. I want you to shop for allies right now. So if you are a smart person, you're going to go to some wise seminars, and there are some outstanding seminars on investing and where to go. I want you to go to those that are upbeat and are forward-looking. I'm not going to mention them here. They're not paying me. But I'm going to say there are some very good continuing education courses coming. Keep your eyes on the real target. The real target isn't to become rich. It's to become successful. It is to gain an asset that eventually you can sell and make a boatload of money. I want you to remember, it is not to go without risk. Every successful person risks something, and sometimes they lose in their investment. They're going to lose in their gamble. But unless you're recognizing what it is that you're really risking and what the potential upside is, you're going to make a big mistake. I want you to think outside the box. When I say that, I want you not to think conventionally, because too many people are looking at risk in only the most, childish way. They don't want to risk anything. They don't want to put any investment in, and they don't want to do any research. And that's a mistake. New solutions must be considered because the problems are actually new. I want you to re-examine your limitations on where you can go and the models of practice you want to be in. Now, listen, I've been doing this now for more than 35 years, and I've seen a lot of trends come and go. I've seen ups and downs. And in my years of doing this, I'm going to tell you the same thing holds true. When there is an opportunity, they're not going to come up and tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, here's an opportunity. It doesn't happen. You've got to find it, but you've got to find it through good research. Someone right now is going to get rich, fabulously wealthy. And you will look back at your life and say, I knew them. I could have done that. I could have helped them. I could have done something with them. Now is the time that that's happening. Is it going to be you who gets rich? I hope so. Now, I'm going to give you the answer, the service that we provide, and you're going to find it's funny because it's the least expensive service we offer. And that is, I want to talk to you on the phone. I want you to buy a telephone consultation time. Really, it's a computer consultation. We look at maps, we look at graphs, we look at charts. I want you to come up with 5 locations, the 5 options that you think are best. Or it could be you're going to ask me, Scott, given my parameters, my limitations, where should I look? I can tell you. Now, by the way, a doctor who says to me, I want to go to Georgia, and they say, I want you to tell me the 5 best sites in Georgia to go to, I can do that. I can't do that with the entire United States. There are millions of places and thousands of locations to consider. But we break it down to the places that you want to go that you're like. The telephone consultation is very inexpensive. Now, let's talk about your ideal sites. You got an idea? I want you to get your spouse, your boyfriend, girlfriend, best friend, and let's get on the computer and talk about it. I can look up data so that you'll have something knowledgeable to know about. We have got brand new information that just came in. Now, a little truth, the federal government has kind of messed up the census. And the data that they have given is only now being compiled and cleaned up. So with this time, it's the time to look forward to the projections, which are better, and the data is newer. So I'm just telling you, now is a good time to think about it. To do this, we're offering a special. We're calling it our harvest discount. It's 20% off our demographic reports. And you look at Turkey 2021. We do this every Thanksgiving. In case you're wondering, this is not a new thing for us. A couple of reasons we do it. For one thing, it is a little slower when we get to the holidays. People don't have time. But it also happens that this is the time new data has come in and new recommendations are made, and we can give you better results. So look, I want you to take advantage of it. I really want to push that telephone consultation, and I want you to understand we're here to help you. Let's work together to give you the solutions and the opportunities to find the perfect place to put a practice. This is Scott McDonald. Please write to me at info@drdemographics.com or visit our site at drdemographics.com. Call us at 833-424-6222. And thanks so much for watching.